A name is the first thing we are given. It's a sound, a whisper, a hope. It's meant to be spoken with love, with pride, and with the promise of a future. But when a young life is taken by violence, that name becomes something else entirely. It becomes a memory etched in sorrow. It becomes a question that hangs in the air, heavy and unanswered. The body is gone, but the name remains. It echoes through empty rooms and silent streets. It's whispered by mothers in the dead of night. It's shouted in protest by those who refuse to let it be forgotten. This is the first cost, the truest cost. It's not a statistic. It's a name, a person, a world that was, and a world that will never be. We're told these events are isolated incidents. We're told they're tragic, but rare. Yet the stories keep coming like waves against a crumbling shore. In Australia, a young Aboriginal man, just 24 years old, dies in police custody. His breath is stolen from him. His name is now linked forever to the long, painful history of over 590 Aboriginal people who have died in similar circumstances since 1991. His family must now carry that name not as a celebration of his life, but as a symbol of a system that failed him. His community must add his name to a list that is already too long, a testament to promises broken and pleas ignored for decades. Each name is a story cut short, a future erased. Across the ocean in America, the story finds a different rhythm, but the same heartbreaking melody. In Columbia, South Carolina, a young man named Jaden Brackens, only 18, is killed at a party. His life had just begun. He was on the very edge of adulthood, full of possibilities that we can now only guess at. His family is left with the ghost of who he might have become. They're left with the silence where his laughter used to be. They're left with a name that now brings a sharp, sudden pain. These are not just news headlines. These are individual universes of grief, created in an instant of violence, leaving behind a void that can never be filled. The loss is a theft of potential. It's the theft of first loves and graduations. It's the theft of quiet Sunday mornings and loud family dinners. It's the theft of the person they were still becoming. For the families, this is a life sentence of grief. They must learn to navigate a world where a fundamental piece of their own being has been ripped away. They must listen as the world moves on, as the news cycle changes, while their own world remains frozen on the day their child was lost. The name becomes both a treasure and a burden, a thing to be protected from being forgotten, but a thing that hurts to speak. This is the brutal inheritance of violence. When a young person is lost, the pain does not stay within the walls of their family's home. It bleeds out into the streets. It seeps into the foundations of the community. It becomes a shared wound, a collective trauma that changes the way people see the world and their place in it. In places like Yuendumu in Australia, the death of a young man in police custody is not a new pain. It's the reopening of an old one. It's a reminder of Kumanjayi Walker and all the others before him. The trust between the people and those sworn to protect them fractures a little more. The air grows thick with suspicion and fear. Safety becomes a fragile idea, not a guarantee. The entire neighborhood feels the shift. The places where children once played can suddenly feel dangerous. The sound of a siren can trigger a wave of anxiety. In Jackson, Mississippi, the deaths of 2 young men in a single day sent shockwaves through the city. These were not just 2 individuals. They were sons, friends, and neighbors. Their absence creates a vacuum that fear and anger rush to fill. The community is forced to ask itself hard questions. How did we get here? How do we stop this from happening again? The very fabric of the community is tested, stretched thin by grief and the desperate search for answers that may never come. This loss of trust is a profound poison. When the police, who are meant to be a source of security, become a source of fear, the social contract is broken. For Aboriginal communities in Australia, this is a historical truth, a pain passed down through generations. Every new death in custody confirms their deepest fears. It tells them that their lives are not valued, that the recommendations of commissions and inquests are just words on paper. This is not just about one officer or one incident. It's about the crushing weight of a system that feels designed to fail them, a system that has been failing them for a very long time. Hope becomes a difficult thing to hold on to. Young people look at what happened and wonder if the same fate awaits them. They see the grief in their parents' eyes and learn to be wary. They learn that the world can be a dangerous place, not because of random chance, but because of the very people who are supposed to ensure their safety. This is the damage that ripples outward. It's a wound in the heart of the community, one that scars over but never truly heals. It changes the way a generation sees its own future, casting a long, dark shadow over their dreams. After the initial shock and the raw public grief, there comes a different kind of pain. It's the slow, grinding search for justice. For the families, this is a second battle, fought in courtrooms and press conferences, long after the world has moved on. They seek not revenge but accountability. They seek an admission that a life was wrongfully taken. They seek changes so that no other family has to endure their nightmare. But so often, justice feels like a distant shore, a mirage that recedes the closer they get. The system that took their child is the same system that now judges itself. In Australia, the cries for reform are decades old. The 1991 Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody laid out 339 recommendations. They were a roadmap to a better, safer future. Yet, here we are in 2025, and another young man is dead. Amnesty International and Indigenous leaders are forced to repeat the same demands. They call for independent inquiries. They call for the full implementation of those long-ignored recommendations. It is a cycle of tragedy followed by calls for change, followed by inaction, followed by more tragedy. The weight of these unanswered cries is immense. It's the weight of history repeating itself. This feeling of powerlessness is a heavy burden for a community to bear. When the legal system fails to deliver what feels like a just outcome, it sends a chilling message. It suggests that some lives matter less than others. It validates the fear and mistrust that already exist. The families of the victims are forced to relive their trauma over and over again through investigations and inquests that often feel more like an ordeal than a path to truth. They must find the strength to speak their child's name, to tell their story, to fight for their memory in a system that seems indifferent to their pain. The demand for reform is not an attack. It's a plea for life. It's a call for police forces to see the communities they serve not as threats, but as partners. It's a demand for oversight that is truly independent, free from the biases of the institutions it is meant to watch. It's a call for community-led solutions, like the credible messengers in Jackson, who use their own experiences to mediate conflict and prevent violence before it starts. These are not radical ideas. They're cries for a system that values every single life, and for a world where a parent does not have to fear that their child's name will become the next hashtag. Where do we go from here? How do we mend what has been so profoundly broken? The path forward cannot be paved with anger and division alone. It must be built on a foundation of courageous honesty, deep empathy, and a shared commitment to healing. This healing must begin with listening. We must listen to the families who have lost everything. We must hear their stories, speak their children's names, and acknowledge the depth of their pain. Their grief must not be a private burden, but a public responsibility. We, as a society, must sit with their sorrow and let it change us. This call for healing extends to everyone. It extends to the police officers who patrol our streets. They too must be part of this conversation, not as adversaries, but as human beings caught in a broken system. We need a new kind of policing, one rooted in de-escalation, community partnership, and the sacred preservation of life. This requires more than just new rules. It requires a transformation of the heart. It requires officers to see the humanity in every person they encounter, especially the young and the vulnerable. It requires a culture where accountability is not a threat, but a core value. True healing also requires a commitment to prevention. We must invest in our communities. We must create opportunities for our young people so that their lives are not defined by desperation or fear. We must support community-led initiatives that seek to interrupt the cycles of violence. This is the hard, slow work of building a just society. It doesn't happen in a single protest or a single piece of legislation. It happens in the daily choices we make to see each other, to support each other, and to demand a world where every young person has the chance to live out their full potential. There is hope. It's not a blind optimism, but a determined belief in our capacity for change. Hope lives in the tireless advocacy of a grieving mother. It lives in the community leader working to stop a retaliation. It lives in the officer who chooses dialogue over force. It lives in every one of us who refuses to accept these tragedies as normal. The path is long and difficult, but we must walk it together. We must work toward a future where no more young lives are wasted, and where every name is remembered, not for how it ended, but for the beautiful, precious life it represented.